This week in Beyond the Headlines, challenges and solutions discussed at First Ever Education Summit.
For quite a while, I've been convinced that we've not been having the right types of conversation that would help us to determine where we want to go with our education system. And although the room is not packed tonight, I heard both the Minister and Dr. Potter say that this is the beginning of a series. So I'm hoping that as we get the replay on television, more people will come on board and join the conversation. And hopefully coming out of the conversation, we can have a well-articulated vision of where we want our education system to go, where we think it needs to go in order to help us to develop as we would like to as a country.
The Ministry of Education was given a clearer picture on Saturday, March 17th of some of the issues facing today's education system as it hosted its first ever Education Summit for Education Week at the Eileen Parsons Auditorium. Held under the theme, Building the Local Knowledge Base for Global Competitiveness, the summit took the form of a panel discussion where two panels looked at the two sides of the coin as it pertains to the education system, namely the challenges it faces and what are some of the solutions to those challenges. As the summit began, Education Minister Honorable Myron Walwyn gave a synopsis of the key questions that would be discussed at the event.
What do we do to better the chances of success for not just students that do well in maths and science, but also those that can break down bikes and circuit boards? How do we help them find the opportunities in the Virgin Islands of 2012? CXC was just here last week, and they publicly stated their interest in having more of our students sit exams that are internationally recognized as the standard for education in the Caribbean. Do we need to consider that exam as the primary benchmark of our secondary school qualifications? Is it in our students' best interest to gain that exit certification in this globally competitive world? We have a population of citizens whose challenges are known primarily to their parents and caregivers, who struggle daily to help their differently abled children have a dignified life in the territory. In 2012, what are we doing to help our citizens that face physical, mental, and other challenges? How do we help them to live an equitable life? What do we do about the young men on the other side of the school fence? Do we continue to point fingers? Or do we find a way to intervene and lower the number of those that are on the outside of that fence and are rapidly filling the cells of balsam gut? Are the expectations of parents and teachers in line with the educating of our children? What is the private sector's role in ensuring that our students getting their first jobs also are presented with adequate training and are on a path for advancement for their career? What can we do in our education system so that in the next 10 years, local faces are the head of major establishments throughout the territory? And lastly, what are the effects of an aged education system on a modern economy? Those are questions that I hope we will be bold enough to confront tonight, if not to find solutions, for us, at minimum, to have respectful conversations about those very real issues that plague our society.
The first panel looked at the many challenges that the education system presently faces, outlining in detail what some of the issues are affecting not only educators, but students as well. One of the challenges affecting today's education was highlighted by Connie George. George explained that training in digital media literacy among teaching practitioners is lacking, and although it is agreed that there is a need for technology in teaching, she said that provisions have not been made to facilitate it.
Training in digital literacy skills is rare in teacher education programs. I would add that it is equally rare in professional development for teachers and administrators. There is a lot of talk and a lot of conviction that we have to address this deficit in digital media literacy among educational practitioners. But a number of educators still can't go beyond old practices. And then, for those who wish to use technology, provisions have not been made. They are not available. The personal challenge we face as 21st century principals is how can we move digital literacy ahead in school? How can we make it the business of the school? Secondly, in spite of our acknowledgement that our students are different due to the digital world, our educational practices and materials are changing too slowly. It is still too common to walk into a secondary history class, that's my area, and see a teacher standing in the front of the room lecturing from notes written on the board. We need to adapt to what students' current needs and identify new learning models that engage our younger generations of students. This means moving from the old classroom that has a teacher at the center to models where students can engage technology and take personal responsibility for their learning.
Speaking to the issue of special education in the BVI, Bth Huggins said that although some legislation has been put in place to facilitate the learning needs of the disabled, special needs education in the territory is still some 40 years behind in terms of advancement when compared to the rest of the world.
We have seen at least 2 constitutions, 2 education acts. We have seen laws amended, policies made, the rights of the children published, and other legal matters documented. But according to one politician, special education is still relatively new in the Virgin Islands. I must quickly say, though, that in the 2004 Education Act, it addresses briefly education, special education, and the determination of special educational needs. The pace of special education in the territory is basically marking time. As a result, we are 40 years or more behind. The research is no doubt ongoing, but sad to say, the data is somewhere in the archive. To this end, the challenges only continue to climb.
Speaking to what she called one of the main challenges facing teachers in the 21st century was Roxanne McNeil, who said that the attempt to produce competitive global citizens faces a major problem when teachers go through a packed syllabus that sometimes isn't given the time it needs to be taught effectively. McNeil said that this results in students being passed on to other teachers who have not grasped previous foundational concepts.
As teachers, we are expected to be highly qualified. We are expected to demonstrate expertise in all subject areas, and I teach in the elementary school. So you're expected to know just about everything for every subject that you have to teach. And although this is so, additional professional development or support is not readily available. And when we do have what is deemed as a professional day, how much so can we gain from that? Rigorous course content. We have so many things packed into our schemes or syllabus that at times you wonder if you'll ever see the end. Unfortunately, this causes us to have students who are being passed along from grade to grade, not having foundational concepts that they need for the next grade. So the next teacher now is faced with a new challenge of trying to play catch up. The time you spend catching up, you never get to what you're supposed to do. So you've passed the problem along. When does the catch up stop? We would love to teach in a holistic way, because for all students to be able to compete globally, they must have an understanding of how all things relate to each other. Unfortunately, with the time we have and the amount of work we have, we tend to teach abstractly. We tend to give students concepts and expect that they know. We tend to teach the way that our parents and some of us may have been taught. But what we fail to realize is that in this 21st century, our children need to learn how to think. Lastly on my list, education is not seen as a priority in our society. Resources and funding, quite limited. And in some cases, they're non-existent. These challenges frustrate teachers. They leave you disappointed, and you feel quite unsupported in the profession. What does this cause us to do? We leave schools, we leave the profession, and then guess what? More people come in and the cycle continues. Those of us who stay, we get stuck in a rut, and we become mediocre. Not that we want to, but sometimes it seems like we've been forced to.
Another challenge that was raised at the summit came under the topic, making the transition from the school environment to the business place. Decoy Octavius spoke about work etiquette and said that social networking such as MSN and Facebook should not find their way into the workplace.
Business writing skills, which proves to be a problem or challenge seen by employers, understanding proper grammar usage, consistency between the British and the American English. Within one document, one should be used. If you're using the British English, it should be used consistently throughout. Sentence construction, appropriate verbiage within your written communications. The use of text-speak has become very prevalent into this writing with the young students. Things such as LOL, BRB, and GM should not find their way within professional correspondence.
And then there were the challenges faced by the college students in the 21st century, which were listed by college student Charlene Leonard. Leonard said that the high school does not prepare students for the workload they experience in college settings, and she said that note-taking is also a challenge for college students, as not every lecturer gives notes during class.
The challenges that are faced by us college students today in the 21st century are: 1. The workload we receive. High school hasn't prepared us for the workload we receive in college. In high school, we receive less work and further deadlines compared to what we are now receiving. This becomes overwhelming because we are simply not accustomed to it. There is no one to push us, and we have to do it on our own. 2. Taking notes can be a challenge. In high school, notes would be written off the board by us students, or maybe handouts would be given to us by the teachers. Not every teacher is willing to provide notes in college. So this requires us students to pay attention to everything that is being lectured and collect our own notes from the lesson, which can be an advantage to some, but a disadvantage to others. Some students who aren't taking the course seriously will be missing out on valuable information simply because they are not listening. 3, what we expect from the teachers. We expect to meet teachers like the ones we had in high school, but in reality, college only provides you with instructors or facilitators. They are there to give you information and to guide you in the right direction, not to spoon feed you like what is done in high school. We now have to become familiar to what is being done in college, but not everyone can adjust that easily. 4, not being prepared from high school. In college, we are asked to do essays, research projects, or even presentations. We are not fully educated to how it should be done. We then don't receive high grades and become frustrated. In high school, yes, we are exposed to these areas, but not at a college level. We cannot perform to the best of our ability simply because we were never taught how to. 5, the immaturity of students. Some of the students that are attending the college are not serious about their schoolwork. They are not mature and they come to school for all the wrong reasons. The atmosphere of college automatically changes, so everyone behaves as if they are still in high school. This can be a great challenge which interrupts the other students who are actually trying to learn. These challenges are impacting our education system. In high school, we are not being fully prepared and educated about college and what is expected.
After the panelists made their points regarding the challenges facing education today, members of the audience took time to make their own observations.
One of the challenges, as I am seeing it as a past early childhood educator, is the number of students that are now becoming special needs not those that born with a disability, but those students who lack nurturing, those children who are not fed properly, those children who are not getting the basic skills, neither in English or math. As a teacher, we were taught that there was a 10% at the top who will always excel. There was a 10% at the bottom that you had to help. And there was a 80% that will make it. And they might even become part of the 10% above if they are taught properly. Those are the challenges that I am seeing for us. There are too many students who are not getting the basic skills.
Many students from the secondary schools do not know the basics in English. To simply find a verb, sometimes in trying to do the usage with them, because the farmers and those who do CXC or school leaving, there's a section in usage. And so they have to know the grammar, subject and verb agreement. Sometimes they cannot find the subject, they can't find the verb.
I feel that we owe our children with special needs an apology for keeping them back, because there you have these children in this box where they feel as though they can't learn, but it's we who don't know how to teach them, because many of them are very brilliant.
Then it was time for the second and final panel to take the stage, and undoubtedly their task was by no means the lightest, as they were to present possible solutions to the issues presented before.
I was asked to look at several questions, and one of the questions that came out to me is, what can we do to motivate students more? And the very first thing I wrote down as a note, the best motivator, quality teaching. Now that may sound like I'm trying to just make a catch-all phrase to cover everything, but not really. If you break it down, we can motivate students if we make the content relevant. If we can answer the question, where will I ever use what I'm learning today? So what you're teaching has meaning, and the student can see how he or she can put it to use in his or her life productively. Second thing, establish relationships with students. When a student knows that you care, that student might do better work, usually does. And would you have a problem if a student works just because he or she likes you? If the student attains the objectives? Know the students academically as well as socially. What's the background? Not just whether they're good in math or English. Are there any struggles at home? What is this student's role in the family? What are the students' interests? What are the extracurricular things that they're good at? Really care and respond to your students so that they know you care. Plan for effective teaching. Structure work in the classrooms so that all students can achieve success at some level. Nothing stimulates success like success. Cater to the various types of intelligences and learning styles. Not everyone learns by seeing. Not everyone learns by taking notes. Not everyone learns by touching. Some of us learn in one way, some of us learn in a multiplicity of ways. So a teacher, when you go to the classroom, you have to be conscious of that and plan so that you can meet the one over there who likes to touch and the one over there who likes to see it on the board. But I just throw in here, if I could have my way, I'd get rid of all the chalkboards. I think they cut back on the effectiveness of what we do as teachers.
Fundamentally, I believe that there has to be a greater level of collaboration, dialogue between the tertiary institution, HLSCC, and the secondary school. The young lady who was here, who is a student at the college, spoke about a difficult transition to the college. One immediate solution that would be very easy to implement would be the creation of a college preparatory workshop, where the students, after the school leaving exam, take classes in note-taking, listening skills, reading skills. Another way to improve the transition between secondary school and the tertiary level is to create a reading revolution. Students, individuals in general, are not going to be able to speak well, to write well, if they do not read. Reading is the basic foundation of everything that exists. There are plenty of educators in the field who are just as bright as doctors and lawyers, and more attention needs to be paid to elevating the level of people in the profession of teaching. We need more advocacy and not agitation. You need to be an advocate for your educational system, someone who supports and argues for that cause. Everything that we do, particularly with young people, has to be attached to making them see the value in the education that is being provided to them at all levels. We have to train our teachers, we have to train our administrators, and we have to train our young people to be leaders. We have to teach them how to set goals, how to articulate their vision. We have to teach them about ethics and culture, how to be servant leaders, and how to empower each other. And lastly, we have to inculcate a spirit of positive competition. Competition is something that's intrinsic, it's internal. I compete with myself to be better, to read more, to think harder, to write better. Because once you compete with yourself and are willing to take yourself to the next level, then that becomes a culture of excellence.
Mr. Grant, in dealing with the challenges, addressed the issue of beginning TVET at the primary level. And Mrs. Huggins also mentioned early intervention as part of addressing special education. And that caused me to note in my solutions that many of these proposals are sitting in offices in the various departments. And we can actually probably get somebody who can just go through all the different proposals and they'll have a job for a lifetime. But many of them are there. Somewhere along the line, I know there was a proposal about introducing TVET at the primary level. It's somewhere. All the intervention that has been proposed, Dr. Samuel can speak to it. We've had many meetings, and we all realize that if you intervene early, then a lot of the problems that are manifesting themselves later will not be problems. And when we talk about early intervention, as she mentioned earlier, we're not just talking about when the child comes to school. We're talking even prenatal. There's some of our young ladies in the community, from the time you see they're pregnant, you know you need to start working with them. Or even before they get pregnant, sometimes you observe the way they're moving and you know that what it's leading to. We need to intervene from then so that the problems do not mushroom later in school. I also want to say that in terms of special education, if we meet the needs of our students with special education, we're actually meeting the needs of all of our students. And we are having more and more students now whose special educational needs are not necessarily things that they were born with, but are needs that are being created by the system and by the community. And we need to grab a hold of those and work on them.
Dr. Carl Dawson said that education begins with the end in mind, outlining the skills and competencies that are expected to be gained at the end of the journey from preschool to high school or college.
We as a community really have to ask ourselves what really is the priority of education and not just lip service. Is it that our greatest responsibility is to educate the next generation? And if that's the case, how should we measure ourselves and say we will only go as far to achieve that end, or should we go all the way? Certainly with respect to education, I think that we have to, as other things, begin with the end in mind. If we begin with the end in mind, determining as a system, as an educational system, for instance, here in the British Virgin Islands, if you look at it straight from preschool to college, or preschool to high school, preschool to college, and we say, well, at the end of that stage, these are the skills and competencies that we expect those individuals to have, then we must also then say, at various stages what is expected to be produced at the various stages of the system. And how are we going to determine whether, in fact, those are being produced? Currently, more than 50% of the students entering the college, and this is data hot off the press, more than 50% of the students up to spring this year, 53 to be exact, need some pre-college course when they come to the college. That is to say, we have our credit level courses, that is true college courses, but if a student is found to be deficient in some area, English or math or so, they are then required to take some courses, because in order for them to succeed, we have set the standard that success for this course requires certain competencies coming in. And if those students don't have those competencies coming in, we have had to create courses that would help to develop those competencies. The question that we would have to ask ourselves of our educational system is it that we're expecting that each stage should prepare the student properly for the succeeding stage? We cannot wait until the end to determine if that's the case. There must be several points along the way to know that we're on track. We cannot wait until they're graduating from HLSCC to say that they're behind.
We often say we want our education system and schools to be like those in the top performing countries around the world: Singapore, Finland, Japan. Are we willing and ready to make the bold decisions and take the kinds of steps that those countries did? We can only achieve our ambitions if we change our system. Are we willing to acknowledge that? Are we willing to recruit, train, and employ teachers from among our top-performing secondary school leavers? Finland recruits the top 8% of their high school graduates for education. Are we willing to support a high-quality, full-service early childhood education system for every 3 to 4-year-old? Recently in Jamaica, I heard the Minister of Education say, if we start right, we end bright. A strong foundation must be laid, or else it all comes tumbling down later on. And are we willing to provide disadvantaged students with the resources they need to succeed against internationally benchmarked education standards? As you ponder those questions, in a publication entitled Tough Choices or Tough Times, a report of the new Commission on the Skills of the American Workforce carried out by the National Center on Education and the Economy, the following steps were outlined as a way forward, and maybe we can think about them and learn from them. Some of the steps are: assume that we will do the job right the first time. 2, make much more efficient use of the available resources we have. We are in tough times. 3, recruit from the top third of the high school graduates going on to college for the next generation of school teachers. 4, develop standards, assessments, and curriculum that reflect today's needs and tomorrow's requirements. 5, create high-performance schools everywhere, how the system should be governed, financed, and organized, as well as managed. 6, provide high-quality, universal early childhood education. 7, give strong support to the students who need it most. 8, enable every member of the adult workforce to get the new literacy skills needed. And last, create personal, regional, and international competitiveness to ensure the capacity for lifelong learning.
According to a GIS press release issued after the event, the Ministry of Education and Culture will continue to host similar meetings in the future as they solicit community input to address the territory's education system. This is Walter Barrett, Beyond the Headlines.